Okay. Okay, so
Programmer joke. Audrey coming alive back there.
I have a slide on that, by the way. Okay, so there's a little bit something for everybody in here, even project managers. So, so the presentation tonight is Big Data 101. There's kind of a lot of development and quite a bit of excitement, in the industry right now around big data. But it's still a fairly new topic. I mean, it's been around for a while, but it's just starting to percolate, and everybody's kind of trying to get information on what it is, what can you do with it, that type of thing. So I put together this Big Data 101 presentation to hopefully answer some of those questions. I'm still myself on a pretty steep learning curve in big data, so not claiming to have all the answers, but this is something to build on. So without further ado, let's get into it. This is my agenda. We're gonna go. Yeah, I think I was eating a bag of Skittles when I put this together. So,
I'll talk about a second one. I think it's rotten.
So I'm gonna go and it's gonna be pretty high level. Big data, what it is. We'll go over the definition, what it's all about. From there, we'll jump into Hadoop, give you some background on that, and then we'll focus on Hadoop on Azure. There's a lot of, there are a number of different technologies out there to handle big data, deal with big data. We, as a Microsoft, as a .NET user group, are going to focus on HD Insight, which is Hadoop on Azure. So just want to put that out there. And then finally, I'll do some demonstrations, and we'll actually start playing around with Hadoop, some of the data sets, and the Microsoft BI components. So hopefully give everyone a feel for how you can move the data around, how you can crunch the data, that type of thing. So Audrey, here's your slide. What is big data? What is it? That's actually big data in binary. UTF-8 or ASCII, I guess.
Very good.
But really, big data is, if the first thing, if you want to talk about, we'll talk about definitions, and everything seems to start with a V. They call it the 3 V's of big data. The volume, the velocity, the variety, and that was the initial definition. Somebody added another V, veracity, right? So I guess you can keep adding V's, but the bottom line really is the value. That's the most important V. Everything else is just getting to that point. And so we'll kind of jump in here. And this is volume. Okay, so from the dawn of time to 2003, and this is an estimate, based on reading I've done. Globally, it's estimated that the human race has generated at 2003 5 exabytes of data. Okay, so who can tell me what an exabyte is in gigs? Anybody?
It's like 100 billion, right?
It's 1 billion gigs.
I mean, 1 billion.
Yeah. So an exabyte. So basically, 5 billion gigabytes of data. That seems kind of low to me, actually. I would have thought it would have been a higher number, but really, what's more important than what the number was in 2003 is the growth that we've seen from 2003 to now, as well as the projected growth through 2015. So fast forward here to 2012, and now we're at upwards of 2,500 exabytes of data. So in 10 years' time, the growth has been phenomenal. And what's driven the growth is we've kind of, we've moved from, I guess in the 80s, where, enterprise relational databases, moving into the 90s with CRM, ERP systems, that type of thing, to where we're using now smartphones, social media starting to come online, sensor data. There's a lot of things that are happening, that have been happening over the last 10 years in the marketplace to drive this growth. And you can see in 2015, it's projected to grow up to 7,000 exabytes of data. And now we just have, right now we have so many data sources out there that are growing immensely. I'll throw out one real quick: is the Large Hadron Collider in Geneva, Switzerland, splitting atoms and particles and that type of thing, is putting out, if I recall the number, it's 15 petabytes of data a year. Now, a petabyte, I think, is 1,000,000 gigs. So 15 million gigabytes of data annually. Just, it's obviously a big facility. But just to give you...
The rest of captivity.
So from there we go into the velocity aspect. The velocity really comes from, again, these sources up here, but they're real-time sources of data. I mean, at any given time, you have, how many people on Amazon? How many people on Facebook? If someone goes onto Facebook or Twitter, they post something, not only whatever they posted, be it photos or comments or whatever, not only does that get posted, sometimes it gets reposted and reposted. Things go so-called viral. They travel along, many different times along the internet, and it's just a different, sort of a different paradigm right now than what we had 10 years ago, with the amount of data and how fast it needs to be processed. Companies like Amazon and Facebook, Bing, Yahoo, Google, all these companies, and a lot more, they're taking the data and they're actually, as we all know, they're adjusting or modifying, making a better user experience, better interaction based on what you're doing. And so that all has to happen really fast, obviously. The other thing is sensor data. Yeah.
I was just wondering, because of social media, so for example, just what you said about the picture. Are they, when you do that and post and somebody reposts, is it a pointer back to your post or is it a copy? Because what I was wondering is that, do you think that the growth is not so much because, yes, you're collecting more data, but then more people are collecting the same data? So
Well,
you get copies of more data, so it grows exponentially.
Well, actually, I was talking to Jeff Mitchell, our IT director, today about this, and something I wasn't even aware of, that there's a lot of things I'm not aware of, first of all, just get that out there. But one of the things I wasn't aware of is that data centers, actually, their largest cost annually is deduplication software, to maybe look for those kinds of opportunities where instead of storing this stuff multiple times, that somehow the software is able to just store it once and then point it back to the different users. So I got to believe that companies like Facebook and all the the big players in the market are doing that.
Trying to do it.
Yeah. So I think that that's going on just to make the data centers more efficient from a storage standpoint. Sensor data. Now this is, I'll throw out another number. This one was kind of mind-boggling too. A flight from London to New York, generates in sensor data, and I got to believe it said sensor data, but it said 750 terabytes of sensor data just for that flight. Now to me that seems like an ungodly number, but it kind of drives home the point that there's a ton of this information being generated. I mean, think of the sensors in your car, or Cadillac with the OnStar system, and on and on and on. There's all this number of different sensors out there collecting god awful amount of data. We all know mobile networks, right?
I was going to say, they're not implying that they're storing that.
Well, yeah, I don't know. I don't know about that. Maybe they, if they are, where are they? Almost have to have a small data center on the plane,
That's
right?
a big black box.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's probably part of it. You know, the black box, you know, the instrumentation on the plane, that type of thing. I'm sure they're covering, you know, including everything and anything in that number. And it may be a little bit embellished, but the point is, you know, just for that one flight, there's a ton of sensor data. Just kind of gives you a sense for the, you know, the amount of data that's being generated on a daily basis. And of course, social media. Variety, the data sources that we have out there now, the landscape is just, you know, there's so many different sources of data, you know, with social media, with sensor data, you know, we still have enterprise data, we still have relational databases. And one thing to point out about the variety of data, the enterprise data market really hasn't grown all that much over the last 10 to 15 years. You know, employees and payroll and all these, you know, these back office sort of applications are still, you know, there's been some modest growth there. All the growth has been, you know, that's what's called structured data, okay? All this other stuff, sensor data, log files, this type of thing, there are no real schemas to it. You know, it's all just, you know, flat files, free-form text, that type of thing. It's not in, you know, happy rows and columns, that type of thing. That's actually 90% of the data that we're talking about. When we talk about the volume of data being created today and the variety, 90% of it today, you know, is estimated to be unstructured data. So that's really kind of the opportunity spot right now. I mean, everybody's really gotten pretty good. The enterprise has gotten pretty good at analyzing and doing data mining on SQL type data. You know, and that's kind of where Hadoop comes into the picture, is because Hadoop can, you know, is pretty good at processing. You know, it can process SQL data, but it can process unstructured data as well. Yeah.
What is Hadoop?
Next slide. So, okay. Okay, finally the value, right? I pulled all this data from McKinsey Global Institute, and, you know, it just gives you a sense of, you know, across industries, the impact that big data is going to have, you know, in terms of opportunities for running your company more efficiently. But there's, you know, more than that, there's entirely new business models out there now. You know, there's companies that are just dedicated right now to analyzing, mining, mashing up data from all those different sources that we talked about, and making some, you know, making some sense out of that, being able to do some predictive analytics on a very large set of data, boiling it down to, you know, some correlations or some causations, you know, for different, you know, whether it be the finance arena or healthcare. It's really kind of across the board, logistics, that type of thing. So there's entirely new models out there. There's a Gartner presentation or a Gartner study that was done recently, and these are all estimates, of course. You know, don't hold me to any of the numbers, but they said that companies that there's kind of a 20% of companies or so, or 10 to 15% of companies right now have adopted a big data strategy in terms of taking advantage of all this data that's out there. So, but yet those same companies are likely to outperform their peers by, you know, 20 to 30%. So, you know, whether we can argue about whether, you know, I don't have this, you know, if those numbers are real, but I mean, I can tell you from my own experience that, you know, from what I've seen, prior to doing software development, I was I was a financial analyst, so I crunched a lot of numbers, that type of thing. My belief is that has been for a while that data-driven companies do win in the marketplace. You know, I think that's sort of been proven out, but, you know, we can agree or disagree on that. But I think that's what this kind of speaks to. Any questions at this point? Everybody good? Okay, Hadoop. So, Hadoop Google, let me back up. Google produced a couple papers early, it was like 2003 or so, GFS, the Google file system, and Google MapReduce. And those were really kind of, watershed moments, I guess, if you will, in terms of distributed computing, because that's what it really was. The distributed file system was taking your storage and putting in different chunks across like a cluster of servers, and then the MapReduce part is analyzing that data. But then the thing that impresses me most is the way that the data in Hadoop is analyzed. Historically, if you want to analyze data, you would bring the data to your processor and you'd crunch the data. You'd collect it all and put it in whatever formats you needed so that you can analyze it. Well, Hadoop does this backwards. Hadoop actually takes the code, okay, they take what's called a mapper, and they disperse the code that's needed to analyze the data out to the servers or the clusters where the data resides. And then there's communication back and forth between the master node, okay, because they have to know, the master has to know what's kind of going on at each of, within the cluster. Then the reducer actually takes the output of the analysis and reassembles it back at the kind of the head node. So it's kind of it puts it on its head, the whole idea of how, at least how I always understood data analysis to happen. You go and you get all your data sources, collect all your data, you're all happy, you can get to it, and this is just completely different, totally kind of a paradigm shift. Well, yeah, back to Google. Google, they released MapReduce papers like about the same time. Guy named Doug Cutting was putting together an open source web server, or a search engine called Nudge. And they were running into a lot of problems with the number of servers and how they were processing information. It was like they almost couldn't throw enough equipment at what they were trying to build. And then they got a hold of the Google, the GFS, and the MapReduce papers, and they ran with it. I think that open source project continued on, but it basically spun off the entire Hadoop segment, to come what it is today. So just some comparisons here. Traditional relational database management systems compared to Hadoop, right? It's more, write once, read many times. Traditional system, more, read and write, read, write. Although I'd argue you probably read a lot more than you write, but.
So Hadoop is really good for, you've collected the data, now you just need to analyze it. So without writing, without thinking, it's still more consuming it.
Yeah, right. Okay, Hadoop on Azure. Okay, the Azure application has the distributed file system like Hadoop. The MapReduce functions. The architecture's same from that standpoint, but it also ties into the Azure storage vault, and particularly into the blob storage area. So you don't have to deploy your data to the Hadoop file system. You can deploy blob storage and run it that way, and then Hadoop on Azure will then send it out to the HDFS as needed, run the analysis, that type of thing. Nice thing about Hadoop, is there a question? Nice thing about Hadoop, though, is that it's compatible with, that you can use Hadoop on .NET, you can use JavaScript functions for Hadoop, which is pretty cool. You can do PowerShell, command line, different scripts and that type of thing. And then where it says Hadoop, that's kind of all the native Hadoop little, APIs, libraries, that type of thing. So you can just go with native Hadoop as well.
Are those all open source as well?
Yeah, they are. Hadoop is based on it's an Apache Hadoop project. The Hadoop that Microsoft has is from Hortonworks, and so it's open source. But then Hortonworks has their own kind of version, I guess, of the open. It's open source, but maybe they're using it in a certain way.
Every open source project is someone has their own version.
Well, I know, and Microsoft has adopted the Hortonworks version, so I think they're working very closely with that company too. And feel free to heckle me, by the way, because I
already spoke.
I was not holding back on you. So.
Sorry. I've just emptied my beer, so I have to pour it out.
Okay. So now we're going to jump into some demonstrations, and I think this is more of the fun stuff. So take a sip of your drink or your Dr. Pepper or whatever.
Before we get into here, are you talking? Who is it for? Is it for a company that needs this statistical information? Is it for me to see how much I like to have a credit card?
No, no.
What is the premise? Who is using it? Who's using big data?
Hadoop is mainly, I believe it's for business. I think the thing about Hadoop is, historically, if you wanted to crunch, the amount of data that's out there and utilize it to get some kind of competitive advantage, you had to be an Amazon or Google. You had to be a really big player in the market, okay, to do the types of, hardcore, real-time analysis that's being done on, the volume of data that's out there, okay. Hadoop on Azure, you can be a small to medium-sized business. You can be a one-person business, and you can now analyze. You have access to those same tools, and obviously you need the skill set to do it, or somebody contracted out, or however you want to do it. But it basically, it gives everyone whatever they want to use it for. I mean, I think the primary application would be business, but you have the ability now to crunch, those same data sets and all the, the variety of data sets that are out in space.
Mark, the difference though, if you tell me if this makes sense, is
yeah.
When you did it the traditional way, and you get all the data and do the analysis, I have all this data, and you figure out what it has to say. But if you use Hadoop, you have to be able to say, go look for this. Because it's so big, if you have to send it some kind of a function, something that you're doing. So I would imagine that the process is probably something like somebody takes a sample of data, looks at it, says, oh, this is what I think it's looking for, and then says, okay, based on that, I'm going to create this thing I would call a function. Now I'm going to take that, and I'm going to send it out to all these different processes that says, okay, go find all these little bits. Right?
Yeah.
And then it just returns what it is.
Yeah, I mean, I think
you have to know what you're looking for, at least within some idea.
Yeah, I think you got to start small before you start analyzing, huge volumes of data. You need to have a kind of a proof of concept. Make sure that whatever it is you're looking at, that you find some correlation or some causation to something based on some data. You got to better be pretty comfortable before you start, analyzing large amounts of data. But I think the development model is still in flux in terms of how to use this tool to develop real world solutions. Okay, so now. Okay, so we are going to go into. Okay, so I'm in the portal here. Because of time, to create a cluster, all I have to do, I go into storage here, create blob storage. Let's see, add new. You can do a quick create on blob storage, give it a URL, and bam, it's up and running. So I think, if you're familiar with Azure, that's pretty quick. So this is the blob that I created right here. This is called BitBlob. Just standard blob storage. Now from there, so Hadoop needs blob storage. Doesn't require it, but if you're going to use blob storage, obviously you need to create the blob storage too. Actually, it actually does require blob storage to create a cluster. I misspoke. Okay, so based on that, I created a cluster, and again, to create a cluster, it's very, you can do a custom create or just a quick create here. Give it a custom cluster name, net cluster, let's say, okay, and you can determine how many, what the size of the cluster you need. This is the options I have within my subscription. I have a MSDN subscription here. give it a password, and let's see. Finicky about. Wants a lot of 10 letters and digits. Okay, so this is, notice I'm using the storage account that I had created earlier for my blob storage. So with that, go ahead and create cluster. So it's creating the cluster, and this is going to take a few minutes, so I'm going to go ahead and use the bit cluster for our analysis that we that had been set up previously. From here, I'm going to go to Manage Cluster.
So you're just configuring the
Yeah, that's it. Okay, so this is the management console for Hadoop, for my cluster. So in here, you notice you have some samples already right out the box. So we're going to do the quickest sample there is, okay? Pi estimator, go here. This is going to be in Java, deployed to my cluster, okay? You see some parameters there. So 16, that's the number of mappers that are created for this job. And 10 million there is how many data points each mapper is going to use for the analysis. So this is actually going to use 160 million data points. I have a 4-node cluster, so it's going to have 4 mappers per node. And so do that. Everything looks good. Execute job. Okay, job is executing. I like to go back to this main window because you can see it gives you the job history down here. And we'll just give that a minute. I ran this earlier today. It took 38 seconds. So, although it took a little more time for it to report to me that it took 38 seconds. So, I don't know if we have any sailors in here. No. The difference between the wind and the apparent wind, depending on whether you're going into the wind, again with the wind. When you're going with the wind, it doesn't seem like there's that much wind. You're going the other way. Let's see. Okay, there we go. See, all right. Yeah, that was almost a minute, right? So, 31, 21. Okay, so took a little more time for reporting, but congratulations, .NET Users Group has completed a Hadoop job. Now, okay, what does that mean? You go here, look at the. You can see where the mappers that were assigned for the job, the number of maps, the samples per map, job finished in 47.9 seconds, and here's the estimated value of pi based on our analysis. Go a little bit further down. Okay, yeah, that's it. Last time I had a little more output. So that's basically a job that has been run. Okay, let's do something a little more exciting. Let's go to the interactive console. This is where we get a little more hands-on with the Hadoop analysis. So to help, gives you, some feedback. This is not an exhaustive list, and some of the different functions that you can use. The language that's used at this screen is called Pig, believe it or not, Pig Latin. So, but the functions that you write, those can be run in JavaScript from this console, as we'll see soon. So, all right, I've got some cheat sheets here, by the way, that I'm working on. Okay, so, all right. Okay, so to load data into Hadoop, one way to load data into Hadoop is with the put command. So I can go out and browse to some files, theoretically. And I think I have these. Okay, so this word count.js. This is the JavaScript file that's going to have the mapper and the reducer function in it for me to run. And I am going to put this in. Let's see where. Upload. Okay, so file uploaded. How do I know that it uploaded? Okay, there. So we got our word count.js. Okay. Now I can do the same thing for the text file that we're going to process. It's davinci.txt. Okay. So we'll do our command type. So this time we'll go back to SkyDrive, BigData. Where is it? I think I put it in here. No, I didn't. I don't know how to put it. Okay.
So what are the commands you're using to make sure Unix and JavaScript for like to see the files and to view the code and stuff like that?
Yeah, that's it's related to Unix. I'm not a Unix person, but it's related to Unix. So anyhow, I don't have that file that I need. But anyhow, I have already put it into HDFS. So the one I was going to put in, I thought I had in my SkyDrive, was this DaVinci text file right here. So we can use it. It's already in our system. Okay, now this is where I really need a little help from my cheat sheet, because we're going to do this pig job from, okay, example, let's see. Now I'm going to MWest. Yeah, okay. Yeah, okay. We're going to call a MapReduce on that file, and we're going to tell it that the map function is going to come from this user MWest word.js. I was testing you, Brian.
See, I know how to type.
Okay, you passed my test. Okay. I'm still working on my understanding of this language. So. Okay. Yeah, it's not so user friendly. And this is where we tell it where we want to put it. Okay. If I got that right, we'll see. Now over, let's see, normally, okay, there we go. I think it might have failed.
Where'd you get your cheat sheet?
Oh,
You don't have the space in it.
let's see. All right, let me do this.
Yeah, but get your count fee just like that.
Thanks, Brian. You're in Fuego.
I
don't think it liked that either. Okay. All right, let me do this one more time and be a little more careful. We go through this.
Would you like this dolphin to look over each other?
We don't have a ladder in here, Brian, so.
Ooh.
Let me get a beer before you start.
Okay. User. You gonna chug a beer? User.
a double quote between
Vince.
Thanks to Mike Whalen, I no longer recognize any disparaging comments about this.
I'm not. I'm one to talk. You know.
I just discard them all.
jealousy. I mean, it's always perfect for communication.
I noticed you were able to hit the up arrow and get that command, the last command back, but can you paste into that email? And probably now that's fine.
No.
Almost like a console app.
I don't see anything. I don't see what the issue is. I guess I need to look at my log file a little closer. Let's see, I looked failed for thing. Output directory. Oh god. Okay. I could have. Yeah. Yeah. All right. We'll do. Let's do this. We'll do top 100 words. And that'll make it more interesting anyway. Okay. Here we go. Okay, that's normal. I think it's running right now. Let's do this. So you can see over here on the right that it's still processing. So I think we're in good shape.
The HDN side, is it general availability yet, or is it still in preview?
So it's still in preview. Yeah. Okay. Here we go. So here we get 20% complete. While we're waiting on that, I want to show you if anyone's familiar with the Windows Azure Data Marketplace. You know, we talked about the sources of data that are out there. Well, this is a pretty good one. So you can get data and applications. It's all stored in the cloud. You go to data here, and you have free and paid trial. These are all the different categories of data that you can choose from by publisher, by category. You know, let me sign in here.
What is the quality of the free ones?
No, it's pretty good. Some of them are kind of dated. You know, like it's kind of like you'll get some data, let's say up to 2010 free, but then if you want the most recent data, which actually is not a bad thing. I mean, you know, think about, you know, what Audrey was talking about before about, you know, analyzing data, try before you buy type thing. You know, data analysis is there's a lot of experimentation. So, you know, not a bad thing. If you find that's data that's, you know, has value, then, you know, just kind of go for it. There's little applications in here too that are kind of neat. I haven't explored them all. But this Microsoft Translator, I think this is made for, you know, if you have a lot of text. But let's say, you know, I'm going to do hello from, okay, Spanish, apply, hola, gives me the text. So if I had, you know, if I wanted to go out and find, you know, crawl different, you know, Spanish-speaking websites, generate a large text file, you know, I could then go in and, you know, and convert that to English. I could then take it to our word count application and find certain words if I wanted to. If I was looking for, you know, something that was popping up, you know, most often, if that was going to help me market or whatever it is I'm trying to accomplish. Okay, 93% complete. We're almost there. It's the little success. Okay. It's the little cluster that could. Okay. Cool. Okay, so what did we do?
Mark?
Yeah.
Here's Mark.
Yeah.
So when you're running Hadoop, does that mean that you're Hadooping? Is that a correct statement?
Hey, you heard it here first, okay? So, so I ran a list. The list is just pound ls here. And you see that we have our file here, DaVinci, top 100 words. Good. Okay, so we'll do a file from my cheat sheet here. File.read file equals FS, and I think FS is file system. I'm assuming. Let's see. It's top. I cannot type. Okay, so that's in the DaVinci text file, which I haven't even really shown you guys, but and gals. But these are, it's a large text file. DaVinci, I guess, wrote a lot of stuff. So these are the top 100 words, as well as the frequencies of those words. There is some small visualization you can do, probably much more, but I have a small example. Data. Word.
Lazy, use the 15,000. Come on.
Thank you. Where is it? All.data needs a parenthesis? No.
You got three little quotes up there. You gotta either take one away or put one in.
I say.
Thanks, guys. Okay. There we go. Which is not a big deal. More or less what we had before. Where it gets cool is you can graph.bar on the data, and you get an unreadable graph. So, but that's the idea. I mean, you can do a lot more with this. This is the 101. We're kind of just scratching the surface on this.
I'm sure that's exportable in some fashion as well, right? So you can then manipulate it with your own device.
Yeah, absolutely. As a matter of fact, and that's what I was saying about moving this data around. The data that I showed you in the data marketplace can be pulled into Hadoop for processing. It can also be pulled into Excel. And things can be pulled from Hadoop to Excel and Excel to Hadoop. You can basically go all the way around that if you want. You want to pull some data, crunch it in Excel, find a model that works for you, then go out to the Azure Data Market, pull, pay to get the premium data set, pull that then into Hadoop, and go ahead and do your crunching then. So it's really cool the way they have this set up. So go back to the interactive console. And we do a quick. So now that we've processed that, we've done our analysis, we're going to pull it into Hive. Hive is kind of like, it's more of a allows you to use kind of like a SQL type of command structure. So like I'm pretty familiar with SQL. So Hive comes a little more naturally to me, than some of the other stuff, the Pig Latin stuff. So
you could use either.
You can
The same thing you just did.
Yeah, you can do map reducers from the JavaScript console or from this Hive console. I'm just gonna work from the table, the file that we just created.
That file is saved in the Azure storage, right?
Yeah. Word 100. Okay, so create Excel table, DaVinci 100 table. I gotta remember that I didn't. Okay. I'm more familiar with this language, but it doesn't seem to help my typing that much. based on past experience tonight, that's probably not going to work, but let's see. So anyhow, type in your statement, evaluate. Seems like three times has been a charm for my my typing. Okay, so it says okay. That's shocking, but I'll take it. Show tables. Describe. And see word. Okay, do that guy. Okay. Okay, so that's just telling me the tables that I have in there. Now I can go ahead and do a select statement from that table that was created. Select out from the, and for those of you who know SQL, this will look, you know, pretty familiar. Okay, evaluate. So we created a table in Hive. You know, based on the analysis we did, we verified that it's there, and now I'm just selecting the top 100 records, which are basically all of the records.
Behind the scenes, make this table in, or?
No, it's still in HDFS. I think. This is a part I'm is a little obscure to me. You know, some of the behind the scenes stuff. Still trying to come up to speed on the commands and how to move the data around and view the data. Not really where I, you know, at that point to, you know, the inner workings of it. So here we go, and these are our words basically and the frequencies, and that's in our Hive table now. Okay, so you say, well, big deal, and I say, okay. You go to Excel, you go to data, get external data from other sources. Okay, you know, earlier today I set up an ODBC connection to that cluster. So I actually had to I went into the control panel, into the administrative tools, and added that connection. So that's something I'm not doing here. I set that up previously. Okay, and there's my my Hive data right there. And that's what I called the connection, by the way, my Hive data. Now I have this bit cluster up here. This is the host, bitcluster.azure-hdinsight.net. The standard port. You pretty much accept the defaults for this once you set it up via ODBC. Okay. Okay, there's that. Wait a second. Caps. Okay. Right, what are we doing here? Connection. I can go ahead. Okay, test connection succeeded. There. Makes me type this in one last time for whatever reason. Okay. All right. Let's give it a second. There we go. So here are the tables. You see our DaVinci Word 100 table. I can go ahead. I can pull these all in, but let's just pull in our table here. I'll just leave this funny default name. Everything else looks good. We'll create it as a table. Okay. And, you know, all I can say is you better know the passwords you use. Because I don't know if they're always required, but I just enter them. So there we go. We're getting the data. Okay, there it is. Pretty cool. Now from there, while we're in Excel, let's go ahead and do some visualization with Power View. second. So Power View comes up. So now we're in the design of Power View. Because it's, let's see what I can do
What
with
exactly
this.
is Power View?
Power View is a visualization tool for standard Excel like tabular data. So typically you would take a table in Excel and you'd insert a Power View tab to do a lot of different visualization. So let's see. I don't think, see, some of these are grayed out, and I'm not sure why. Oh, okay. It's a little slow. I put a map in here, over here. But that's really not going to be so applicable to this this particular analysis because it's not mappable data. Let's see if I can. Okay, I'll tell you what. I'm going to do something better. The point of that was to get data from Hadoop into Excel. Now let's get data from the Azure Marketplace. Okay. Now it's going to ask me for a link or a file. Fine. You give it that. Okay. So I'm going to go back to my data. This time I'm going to make sure to pick some free mapping data. So per capita by state. Let's do that. Explore data set. Okay, 100 of 900 rows. So then all I gotta do is I can click this. This is the link I'm gonna use to get the data into Excel. And to make sure that Excel knows that I don't have any malicious intent, you have to give it a primary account key as well. Okay, there's our data set. Stick with the main names. I'm going to make it a table. Okay, and there we go. So there's our year, our GDP per capita, for these areas. And this is where you go. This data is going to be much more easy to work with in Power BI. In terms of showing you some of the advanced features. So I click over here. I'm going to go insert map. That's going to launch. Well, this will be cool too. I'll launch. There's another. Everything starts with Power. There's something called Power Map now, which is kind of in a preview, where I'm going to be able to tie this data there. Okay, so capital. By state. Okay. Yeah, let's oh, I see. Okay, sorry, I gotta click on this to be state province right there. I probably shouldn't have entered this twice. Oh, I see. Hold on. Yeah, thanks, Brian. Hold on. Okay, so there's some output. Okay, so there's real GDP per capita. There's a sum. I'm going to close this and zoom in on a statewide level. Sorry, it took a little doing. Like I said, I'm still getting to know these tools, their preview. Now again, this doesn't show us a whole lot, frankly. Maybe if we rotate the Earth a little bit.
I didn't say that.
So anyhow, that really the main idea here is just don't focus too much on if it's not whiz bang. That comes with more time and more analysis, that type of thing. The real point, and I think the key takeaway, what I'm trying to drive home is, the idea of you can use Hadoop if you want to analyze large, data sets, be it real time, near real time, that type of thing. You can kind of compete with the big boys on the analysis level now. Okay, and all that data, you can move data from there to the Azure Data Marketplace. And there's so many other sources of data out there right now. OData, XML, kind of the world's your oyster in data. And you can move that data to Excel, from Excel back to Hadoop. Everything kind of can flow. I mean, if you just looked at like in Excel, when I went and picked a data source for here, let's say, let me do a new sheet. Data. When I look at data sources here, like SQL Server, Analysis Services, Marketplace, OData, XML, Data Connection was Microsoft Query. From web, there's others here. From web, from access, from text. So you have just a plethora of ways to gather information. In Excel, we also know there's tons of data out, on the internet. And if you need some horsepower to analyze it, then you can go to Hadoop. So, any questions?
It's also safe to say that the Azure Marketplace also provides a commerce capability for if you have data.
Yeah, that's
like to sell.
Yeah. If you want to publish data, you can do that too. I think that's another thing. The big data movement is companies have data that may be marketable to other industries. You may be able to monetize that data. I'll give you an example. I'm working on a project now with a large insurance adjuster company. So they have these adjusters that are going out for all these different kinds of emergency storms, that type of thing, and writing up claims. Well, somebody may be interested in the amount of claims, without getting any personal information away, but the number of claims that are being generated by city, or whatever. There's a lot of data that they have adjusters all over the country collecting a lot of data about the type of damage, the types of claims, that type of thing. It's probably valuable to somebody. I'm not an expert in that field to know, but you may be able to look within and monetize that data, and it's very easy to publish it out to the Azure Data Marketplace. Matt?
In terms of performance, have you seen any comparisons done between Hadoop and Comstor indexes?
I'm not sure. No, I haven't seen those types of comparisons. All I can say is there's Hadoop, as of the material I've read, they have something called I think it's called a 1 terabyte storage algorithm, and it's like how can an application reorganize or store in a certain way a terabyte of data. It all happens in a matter of a minute or so, whatever. Last I read, Hadoop had surpassed the previous record, doing that. So there's some benchmark out there, but I haven't seen the specific comparison that you're talking about. And really, I don't, I think SQL Server and the Hadoop analysis, it's like Hadoop is good at one thing, okay, for what it does, and SQL Server, I'm a SQL person, so there's things that SQL's going to still be good for, and always probably will be good for, that Hadoop is probably not good for. So I think it's just kind of getting into the mindset of, that you have another tool in your toolbox, and, it's not the tool for everything. It's kind of the cool thing right now, and I think it will, be very useful, and, will only continue to kind of grow in its use. But we have other things that, for other problems at that point.
How do people play around with Hadoop if they want to look into that?
Yeah, good question. I'll tell you the easiest, if you have an MSDN subscription, you can sign up for Azure. You can sign up for the Hadoop preview. It's free. They give you tons of processor time in terms of number of cores. I mean, these are some other resources here. There's at the Hortonworks website, and this will be on our website, by the way, this presentation, for those of you who are interested in this information. Hortonworks is the company, the version of Hadoop that Microsoft uses on Azure. They have a sandbox with some really cool tutorials to step you through how to use Pig, how to use Hive, they have other things I haven't even gone into, HCatalog and Uzi and Scoop and Bari and all these other, little tools that are out there, within the Hadoop ecosystem. So that's a great tool. Windows Azure Marketplace. The Windows Azure Training Kit on GitHub actually has a number of really good tutorials to step you through just what I did. And then it's a matter of, building a foundation for yourself if you don't have that, and then, putting in the time and getting more experience and, kind of improving your craft. Any other questions? Concerns? Tomatoes? Ralph?
Let me just make a comment. Last week I happened to be looking at some of the videos that are on the Microsoft research site. There's a video up there by Dr. Sam Madden from MIT talking about big data.
Yeah.
And I think it's about an hour long. If you have the time, look at it. It's called Going Big on Big Data. And what's really interesting is down about the last 10 minutes, he gets into showing an analysis of a month's worth of Twitter accounts.
Yeah.
Where they had the geographic data with it.
Mm-hmm.
And then he did a search on Central Park on this data and was able to zoom in and find a big rectangle in New York City showing all these tweets that were coming out of Central Park. People saying, I'm at Central Park.
Right.
And it's kind of an interesting thing.
Yeah. So Ralph, you went and looked at a presenter from MIT. Then couldn't you have waited till after my presentation to see that?
I learned more here than I did from the video.
Oh, okay. You're too kind. Any other questions? No? I hope everybody got, a lot out of this. I apologize, I fumbled around a bit. I mean, I'm still learning this stuff, and
I can't believe you missed
first presentation with the group, I was, had a little jitters there. So, thank you all for participating, and have a good evening. Hope to see you at the next group. This one?